Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something that might just change the way you see failure forever. Failure is not the enemy. In fact, failure is often the very tool God uses to mold your destiny. Some of you are stuck because you failed once and you thought that meant stop. But I'm here to tell you that was just the first draft of your destiny. The path to greatness isn't paved with comfort. It's paved with trial, error, correction, and commitment. You tried and failed, good. That means you had the courage to take a shot. Now try again, but this time fail differently, fail with data, fail with feedback, fail forward. Because every time you fail again, you're collecting the intel you need to succeed big. But here's the key: fail better. Don't make the same mistakes. Evolve. If you failed last time because you weren't consistent, this time show up like your life depends on it. If you failed because you didn't believe in yourself, this time speak faith over fear. You see, every failure is feedback. Failure is a teacher, and the tuition you pay is discomfort. But if you let it teach you, it will take you where comfort never could. The only people who don't fail are the ones who never try. And if you're not trying, you're not growing, you're not stretching, you're not becoming. Failure is feedback, not final. Every attempt refines your strategy. Progress requires persistent action. Fear fades through repeated effort. Success is built on corrected mistakes. Resilience unlocks your potential. Failure is feedback, not final. That simple truth, if truly understood and internalized, can transform the way you approach every challenge in your life, every goal in your business, and every dream you've put on the shelf because of disappointment. The problem isn't that people fail. The problem is that most people misunderstand what failure actually is. We've been conditioned to treat failure like a dead end, a signal to stop, a final verdict on our ability or our worth. But failure, in its truest form, is none of those things. Failure is simply information. It's the result of action. It's the evidence that you tried, that you stepped out, that you did something most people are too afraid to do. And the result, no matter how disappointing, contains valuable data. When you fail, you've learned one way not to do it. You've exposed a flaw in your process, not in your identity. Most people attach their failures to who they are, not what they did. That's the first mindset shift required to turn failure into fuel. You are not your failure. You are not your results. You are the operator, and failure is just feedback from the machine. It's telling you what needs to be tuned, improved, or eliminated. If you see failure as a mirror, not a judgment, it can reflect where your next level begins. You see, in business and in life, most of what you learn doesn't come from books, mentors, or courses. It comes from experience. And experience is the child of action and failure. You can read all you want about how to build a sales funnel, how to pitch investors, how to lead a team. But until you actually do it and it doesn't go the way you planned, you won't fully understand it. Failure teaches in ways that theory never could. It sharpens your instincts, humbles your ego, and exposes the assumptions you didn't even know you were making. But that only happens if you choose to receive failure as feedback. Most people get offended by failure. They take it personally. They make it about who they are instead of what they did. And because of that, they miss the message. They don't reflect. They don't evaluate. They don't extract the lesson, so they repeat the mistake or worse. Never try again. But when you adopt the mindset that failure is feedback, you start to welcome it. You stop fearing it. You stop letting it paralyze you. Because now, every failure becomes a step forward, not a step back. It becomes part of the process, not a punishment. Think about it like this. If you were designing a product and tested it for the first time and it didn't work as expected, would you throw the whole thing away? Or would you go back, tweak the design, analyze the results, and try again? Of course, you'd try again. That's exactly what engineers do. That's what inventors do. That's what creators do. The first version is never perfect. But what separates the winners from the quitters is how they respond to failure. If you see it as the end, it will be. But if you see it as feedback, it becomes the beginning of refinement. And here's the truth. The faster you fail, the faster you learn. The faster you learn, the faster you grow. Most people delay action because they're afraid to fail, so they also delay the feedback that could accelerate their progress. They're waiting to feel ready. They're waiting for a perfect plan, but the plan only becomes perfect through movement, through action, through course correction. That's where real progress is made. You can't course correct if you're standing still. You have to be in motion. You have to be willing to fall a little, stumble a little, adjust a lot, and keep it moving. That's why the most successful people are not the ones who never fail. They're the ones who fail the most and learn the fastest. They don't look at a closed door and stop. They look at the door, try the handle, and if it's locked, they try another, or they kick it down, or they build their own. Because failure didn't tell them no. It told them not this way, and that's all feedback is. It's direction, it's correction, it's the universe, or God, telling you there's something better, something smarter, something stronger within you that's being called forth. When you really get this, you stop trying to avoid failure and start using it. You let it sharpen your strategy. You let it reveal what needs to grow. You stop panicking when things don't work out and start analyzing why. That's where power comes from. That's where clarity comes from. Failure is the test that turns into the teacher if you're willing to stay in class. Most people drop out before the lesson is done, and that's why they stay stuck. But if you're willing to keep showing up, to try again and again, and view each setback as valuable input instead of personal indictment, you'll find yourself evolving faster than you thought possible. Certainly here's an expansion of *** Keynote No. 2. Every attempt refines your strategy, *** into approximately 700 words, with no headings and no concluding sentences. Every attempt refines your strategy. That's the part most people overlook when they focus only on outcomes. They measure success purely by results. Did it work or didn't it? But they ignore the deeper success embedded in the process itself. Because every single time you take action, regardless of whether you win or lose, you're gathering intel that you didn't have before. That information doesn't just sit there. It shapes your next move. It sharpens your edge. It helps you eliminate guesswork and replace it with experience. Strategy is not built in the mind alone. It's forged in the fire of trial and error. You don't get better at something just by thinking about it. You get better by doing, assessing, adjusting, and doing again. Every call you make, every product you launch, every conversation you have, every deal you negotiate. It's all data. You learn what worked, what didn't, what resonated, what fell flat. You learn which clients are the best fit and which ones drain your time. You learn when to push and when to pause. You can't get that level of clarity by standing on the sidelines. Strategy isn't static. It's not something you figure out once and follow forever. It evolves, and it only evolves through repeated attempts. Think about a sculptor working with marble. The first few strikes of the chisel are never precise. But as they go, they begin to see the form take shape. Each tap, each adjustment brings the vision into sharper focus. That's how strategic refinement works. Your first version of a business model, a message, or a marketing campaign might be rough. But as you keep testing and tweaking, the clutter falls away. The core gets clearer. The offer becomes tighter. The delivery gets smoother. And none of that happens in a vacuum. It happens through bold action, feedback, and strategic adaptation. Most people think they need the perfect plan before they start, but the truth is, the perfect plan doesn't exist until after you start. You can sit in your office or your room with a notebook for days trying to map everything out. But your best strategy is waiting on the other side of action. You need to step into the field, take a swing, and learn from the contact. Maybe you hit, maybe you miss. Either way, you now know more than you did before. The next time you step up, you're smarter, you're quicker, you're better equipped. This is especially true in entrepreneurship and leadership. Your market will tell you what works. Your audience will show you what they value. You can have $1 million idea in your head, but until you release it into the world and watch how it performs, it's just a guess. Action reveals reality, and each attempt allows you to refine the message, the method, the mechanics. You start to learn your audience's language. You start to realize what they want versus what you thought they wanted. That's strategic intelligence you can only acquire through movement. Repetition doesn't just build skill, it builds wisdom. The more you try, the more you start to see patterns. You begin to predict outcomes. You start to notice what steps lead to what results. You make sharper decisions faster because you've seen this kind of situation before. That's the difference between beginners and pros. Pros aren't lucky, they're experienced, and experience comes from exposure. Every attempt gives you that exposure. Each one is a small investment in your long-term mastery. It's also how confidence is built. Not from theory, not from hype, but from repeated engagement with reality. You can watch other people's success stories and try to copy their strategies, but until you get in the game and test it for yourself, it's not yours. You've got to own your process, and ownership comes from repeated creation, repeated communication, repeated selling, failing, and adjusting. With every attempt, your internal GPS gets more precise. You move from guessing to knowing. And that's when you become truly dangerous, in a good way. No one builds a successful business, career, or purpose-driven life on a single shot. It's layer after layer, version after version, iteration after iteration. You try it this way, then that way. You fine-tune the message. You optimize the system. You change how you show up. You notice where the friction is and smooth it out. You notice where momentum is and double down. Your strategy matures with every move, and you begin to lead not just from knowledge, but from tested, proven insight. Here is the 700-word expansion of *** Keynote No. 3. Progress requires persistent action, ***, without any headings or concluding sentences. Progress requires persistent action. Not occasional effort, not random bursts of motivation, but daily, deliberate movement toward your goal. The gap between where you are and where you want to be is not filled by inspiration alone. It's filled by consistent execution. Too many people think success is a single event. They imagine there's one moment, one decision, one opportunity that changes everything. But the truth is, lasting transformation is built on small, persistent actions repeated over time, even when you don't feel like it, even when the results aren't showing up yet. The people who get ahead are not always the most talented. They're not always the most educated, but they are the most committed to staying in motion. They understand that you don't have to move fast all the time, but you do have to move forward. Progress is directional. If you're headed toward your vision, even in inches, you are winning. But you only stay on that path if you remain in action, and not just any action. Purposeful, focused, refined action that builds upon itself. When you take consistent steps, no matter how small, you develop what most people lack. Momentum. Momentum is powerful. It's what turns effort into efficiency. It's what transforms discipline into habit. The hardest part of any journey is starting. The second hardest part is continuing when it gets boring, hard, or discouraging. But every time you choose action over apathy, movement over waiting, you're reinforcing your identity as someone who follows through. You're developing internal credibility. You start to believe in yourself, not because of hype, but because of history, because you've seen yourself show up. Persistent action also refines your focus. When you keep working towards something, you start noticing what matters and what doesn't. You stop wasting time on distractions. You stop trying to do everything and start focusing on the things that move the needle. You discover where your energy is best spent. You learn when to push, when to pivot, and when to pause, not to quit, but to reload. That kind of clarity doesn't come from thinking alone. It comes from doing, from being in the game, from real-time feedback. Most people struggle with persistence because they're obsessed with speed. They want results now, they want to skip the process, but you can't microwave mastery, you can't shortcut development. Persistent action forces you to grow at the speed of reality. It humbles you. It exposes your weaknesses and demands that you strengthen them. It takes your potential and turns it into power. You stop just dreaming and you start building. And brick by brick, habit by habit, you begin to create something sustainable, something real. It's important to understand that persistent action isn't glamorous. It's not always exciting. It's often repetitive, and that's exactly why most people don't stick with it. They confuse boredom with being off track. But boredom is often a sign you're finally doing the real work. The exciting part is starting. The transformational part is staying with it when the novelty wears off. That's when you're sculpting your discipline. That's when you're proving to yourself that your vision is stronger than your mood. That's when growth starts to accelerate, right in the middle of the mundane. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be consistent. You don't need to know every step. You just need to take the next one. Persistent action compounds, like drops of water carving a canyon, like seeds becoming trees, like steps turning into miles. Small daily moves, repeated without fail, create outcomes that once seemed impossible. Most people overestimate what they can do in a week and underestimate what they can do in a year of persistent, focused effort. The breakthrough doesn't come because you tried once. It comes because you refuse to stop. In every area of life, business, relationships, health, personal growth, the principle is the same. You get what you consistently work for, not what you occasionally wish for. Your actions are the clearest indicators of what you truly value. So if you want to know where you're going, look at what you're doing daily. Are your actions aligned with your ambitions? Are you putting in the work when no one's watching? Are you building momentum or just burning energy in short sprints? Persistent action isn't about being busy. It's about being committed. It's about showing up when it's hard, when it's slow, when no one is clapping, when the results aren't visible yet. It's about being willing to look foolish, to keep trying, to keep adjusting, and to stay in motion because you know that progress doesn't reward the fastest. It rewards the most faithful, the ones who keep going, the ones who refuse to let delay become denial, the ones who turn discipline into destiny. Here is the 700-word expansion of *** Keynote No. 4. Fear fades through repeated effort, ***, without any headings or concluding sentences. Fear fades through repeated effort. What you're afraid of today may not scare you tomorrow, not because the fear magically disappears, but because your action chips away at its power. Fear thrives in inactivity. It grows in silence, in hesitation, in all the places where movement stops. The longer you sit with it without acting, the bigger it becomes. It multiplies in your imagination. It plays out worst case scenarios, magnifies consequences, and convinces you that taking a step forward will lead to disaster. But when you act in the face of fear, even a little, the illusion starts to break. Most people think they need to feel confident before they take action. They wait to feel brave before they make the call, send the message, step on the stage, launch the product. But that's not how confidence works. Confidence doesn't precede action, it follows it. You don't become courageous by sitting still. You become courageous by moving anyway, by doing it afraid, by pressing through the tight chest, the sweaty palms, the trembling hands. You take the step even when your voice shakes, and every time you do, fear loses a bit of its grip. Repeated effort turns fear into familiarity. What once looked like a mountain becomes a hill. What once felt overwhelming becomes manageable. Your first sales call might terrify you. Your 10th might still make you nervous. But by the 50th, you've built muscle memory. You've developed skill. You've trained your body and your brain to respond differently. That's the power of repetition. It doesn't just improve your performance. It rewires your relationship with fear. Because what you expose yourself to regularly, you stop running from. Fear feeds on the unknown. The less experience you have with something, the more room your mind has to invent terrifying outcomes. But experience, through effort, starts to fill in the blanks with truth. You stop imagining what might happen and start remembering what actually happened. And usually what actually happens is this. You survive, you grow, you learn, you get better. Even if it goes wrong, even if you fail, you find out that you're stronger than you thought. That awareness creates emotional stability. It gives you the internal evidence that fear can scream, but it doesn't have to decide. Fear is not a signal to stop. It's a signal that you're stepping into something that matters. If it didn't matter, you wouldn't feel anything. That fear, that pressure, that weight, it's a sign you're in the arena, you're stretching, you're doing something your old self never would have dared to do. And while your fear wants to protect you, it's usually protecting you from discomfort, not danger. Repeated effort teaches your nervous system the difference between the two. You stop interpreting discomfort as a threat. You start seeing it as a doorway. One of the biggest lies fear tells you is that it's permanent. That you'll always feel this way, that if it's scary now, it'll always be scary. But effort exposes the lie. The more you do the thing, the less intimidating it becomes. This is why people who seem fearless are often just experienced. They've done the hard thing so many times it's no longer hard. The courage didn't eliminate fear, it just made fear irrelevant to the decision. And repetition is how you develop that kind of courage. Not by avoiding what scares you, but by choosing to face it again and again. Repetition also develops trust, not just in the process, but in yourself. You start to believe that you'll find a way, even if you don't know what that way is yet. You begin to realize that your fear is just a voice, not a verdict. And every time you keep moving in spite of it, you build evidence. You build a track record. You begin to remember how many times you've been scared before and made it through. That memory becomes a weapon the next time fear shows up. Because now you have proof that fear doesn't get the final say. You can't think your way out of fear. You have to move your way through it. Motion disrupts emotion. When you take action, you interrupt the pattern. You shift your focus from what might go wrong to what you can control right now. And over time, those small, courageous efforts accumulate. They stack up. They become part of your identity. You begin to see yourself not as someone who's afraid, but as someone who acts in spite of fear. And that shifts. Small at first creates massive change. This is the essence of transformation, doing the thing before you feel ready, again and again, until readiness catches up. Until the thing that used to paralyze you becomes part of your rhythm. Until the fear that once ruled you becomes background noise. That kind of change doesn't come through waiting, planning, or overthinking. It comes through motion, through effort, through repetition, through the decision to lean in instead of back down. Here is the 700-word expansion of *** Keynote No. 5. Success is built on corrected mistakes, ***, without any headings or concluding sentences. Success is built on corrected mistakes. Not on perfection, not on flawless execution, not on getting everything right the first time, but on the ability and willingness to identify, own, and fix what went wrong. Every successful person you admire has failed more times than they can count. But the difference is they didn't just fail, they learned, they didn't just fall, they got back up with insight. Mistakes are not the enemy of success. Uncorrected mistakes are. Repeated mistakes that go unchallenged, unexamined, and uncorrected. That's what keeps people stuck. But when you treat every mistake as a lesson in disguise, you begin to unlock real, sustainable growth. The truth is, mistakes are inevitable. If you're growing, if you're building, if you're stretching, you're going to mess up. You're going to say the wrong thing, miss the mark, make the wrong decision, hire the wrong person, lose money, waste time. That's the cost of movement. But what separates those who rise from those who remain is the ability to look at what went wrong with honest eyes and ask, what can I learn? What do I need to change? How do I make sure this doesn't happen again? That kind of reflection is how success is born. Not through getting it right every time, but through making fewer of the same mistakes over time. Corrected mistakes become your blueprint. They give you data. They show you what doesn't work, and that's just as valuable as knowing what does. Every wrong turn teaches you something about direction. Every failed launch teaches you something about timing or messaging. Every broken relationship teaches you something about communication, about boundaries, about alignment, but only if you're willing to take ownership. That's where most people struggle. It's easier to blame the economy, the audience, the algorithm, the team, anything but yourself. But you can't change what you won't take responsibility for, and without correction, mistakes become cycles. Patterns, ruts you stay trapped in, because you're not willing to look in the mirror. When you start to see mistakes as part of the construction process, you stop resisting them. You stop being afraid of them. You stop hiding from them, and most importantly, you stop repeating them. Because now, instead of trying to look perfect, you're committed to becoming excellent. And excellence is not the absence of error, it's the mastery that comes from fixing it fast. The faster you admit a mistake, the faster you can recover, and that recovery time, that's what gives you the edge. It's not that you don't get hit, it's that you bounce back smarter every time you do. In business, this shows up everywhere. The first version of your offer might flop. The second version might do a little better. But by the fifth or sixth iteration, if you've been paying attention, if you've been adjusting your copy, your targeting, your delivery, your follow-up, you've now got something that works. And the only reason it works is because you let it fail, and you let those failures inform your improvements. This is how great products are built. This is how great leaders are shaped. Through fire, through feedback, through failure, but only if the lessons are applied. In life, the same principle holds. You might not handle a conversation well. You might lose your temper. You might miss an opportunity. But the key is not to beat yourself up. The key is to pause, reflect, and make the internal changes that ensure you don't keep stumbling over the same stone. Mistakes are invitations. They call you higher. They ask you to rise into the version of yourself that can handle the next level. And every time you choose correction over comfort, you grow stronger. Most people are so afraid of being wrong that they never get to be great. They confuse failure with identity. They think making a mistake makes them a mistake. So they play small. They overthink. They never launch, never try, never risk. But greatness doesn't come from staying safe. It comes from being bold enough to try, humble enough to fail, and wise enough to adjust. Corrected mistakes are how you calibrate your path. They're how you keep moving forward without wasting time repeating what didn't work. The road to success is not a straight line. It's a series of missteps and course corrections. You think you're going one way, and then you hit a wall, so you back up, turn slightly, and try again. That adjustment, that micro shift, is everything. It's what separates the stuck from the successful. Because success isn't about avoiding the wall. It's about responding well when you hit it. And every mistake you fix becomes a stone in the foundation of your next breakthrough. Here is the 700-word expansion of *** Keynote No. 6. Mastery is the reward for relentless refinement, ***, without any headings or concluding statements. Mastery is the reward for relentless refinement. It doesn't arrive all at once. It doesn't show up in a flash of inspiration or fall into your lap because you're passionate. Mastery is earned. It's sculpted through consistent effort and shaped by a commitment to getting better every single time you do the thing. The person who becomes the best in their field is not always the most naturally gifted. More often, it's the one who's willing to repeat the fundamentals more times than anyone else. The one who takes the basics and polishes them until they become brilliance. Refinement is not glamorous, it's not loud, it's the quiet work. The repetitive, intentional adjustment that most people overlook because they're chasing shortcuts. Relentless refinement means you're never satisfied with just getting by. It means you ask yourself after every performance, every call, every project, what could have been better? What can I improve tomorrow? And you do it without guilt, without shame, without beating yourself up. Because refinement isn't about proving you're not good enough. It's about proving to yourself that you're committed to excellence. It's the difference between showing up and showing up with precision. Between doing something once and doing it well 1,000 times, getting better each round. You can't reach mastery by dabbling. You can't visit your craft once a week and expect to be world class. You need to be obsessed, not in a toxic way, but in a focused way. You need to care enough to keep sharpening the blade even when it's already cutting. Every time you do the thing, write the script, give the pitch, deliver the coaching. You study yourself, you listen. You rewatch, you look at your tone, your pacing, your timing. You ask, where did I lose them? Where did I light them up? Because mastery lives in the margins, it lives in the tupor, scent improvements that compound over time. Relentless refinement also requires humility. You have to be willing to admit that you're not finished, that even though you're good, you're not done growing. The moment you think you've arrived is the moment you start declining. There's always a next level, always another layer of depth, skill, or understanding to uncover. And when you embrace that, you stop seeing repetition as boring. You start seeing it as your edge, because repetition with awareness isn't boring. It's building, it's where you take what's raw and make it refined, where you turn average into elite. Think of a musician, a speaker, an athlete, an entrepreneur. The ones who dominate their space are not experimenting in the big moments. They've rehearsed the moment 1,000 times before anyone ever sees it. They've refined their message, their movement, their mindset. They've studied every angle. They've failed in private so they can succeed in public. And that's the gift of relentless refinement. It makes you ready. It gives you a level of confidence that only comes from repetition and improvement. You don't just hope you'll perform well. You know you will because you've put in the work behind the scenes. Mastery is not a destination. It's a decision to stay in the process long after others get bored. It's waking up every day and committing to outlasting your excuses. It's revisiting the details that most ignore. It's testing new approaches, reviewing what worked, discarding what didn't, and repeating the cycle until excellence becomes automatic. And when excellence becomes automatic, people start calling you gifted. They call you a natural, but they don't see the hours, the edits, the rewrites, the drills, the failures that fueled your ascent. Refinement isn't just about performance, it's about alignment. When you're relentlessly refining, you're not just getting better at your skill, you're becoming more congruent with your identity. You stop chasing what looks good and start aligning with what feels right. You begin to deliver your work with clarity, power, and purpose. You remove the fluff. You tighten the delivery. You get to the essence. And that's what mastery really is. Not doing more, but doing less with greater precision. Most people don't fail because they lack potential. They fail because they stop refining. They plateau. They settle. They say good enough and move on. But the ones who break through, the ones who become undeniable, are the ones who go back again and again and again, refining their message, their mindset, their methods. They're not looking for massive leaps every time. They're hunting for edges, small edges that compound, one tweak in phrasing, one shift in energy, one extra rep that no one else is doing. That's what builds the gap between average and extraordinary. And it's through that gap that mastery is born.